Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to create this onboarding experience for an app that I'm working on called Pawsome. The name is kind of self-explanatory, but I'm targeting this app towards pet owners and people who want to adopt a pet, specifically dogs and cats to begin with. Using this app, adoption agencies can share the available pets and all their features so that the users can actually search them in the app and then they can apply directly to adopt that pet using the app. And pet owners can also purchase a variety of pet products using this app for their possum pets. Get it? You can download the Adobe Xd starter file from the link in my description to follow along. All right, so let's get started. For the onboarding experience in Adobe XD, I'm going to create the first screen, which is called the splash screen or launch screen or startup screen. I'm just going to rename this. And if you see this shortcut to these different tabs over here, to open the libraries, the shortcut is Shift Control Y. To open the layers panel, the shortcut is Control Y. So I'm going to use these shortcuts to speed up the process further. All right, so I'm going to fill this artboard with this color. Okay, and now I'm going to just drag and drop the logo. What do you think about the logo? Is it good? I created this in Illustrator. If you like the logo or if you like to provide any suggestions, please do mention them in the comments section down below. All right, so this screen is the splash screen. It only contains the logo. Rename this screen. It's going to be get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this logo and I'm going to place this logo a bit up. Now I'm not actually creating another logo or adding another image over here. I want the names to be the same. Now we're going to see the importance of that later when we do the prototyping. All right, so going back to the layers panel, what I want in this is get started button, which I've created. It is just a group of a rectangle with a border radius and shadow and this text get started. And then I also want the sign in. I'm going to pull up some few options for sign in, that is using social media. I'm going to group this section for the social media. I like to name the layers so I know like what layer stands where in this app, in the screen. And it's a good practice to name your layers. So I spent a good amount of time renaming the layers. Just going to group this all. Okay, that's good. All right, so when the user clicks on get started, we want to play or show them the different carousel images. So I'm just going to create a duplicate of this, which is Control D. Now rename the layer or rename the artboard, I'm sorry. Onboarding, and which is the first out of the onboarding screens. So I'm gonna resize this logo to about 100 pixels, and just going to move this up a little bit and arrange it. So again, I'm just not getting another image altogether. I'm just resizing this one, and that's why I'm actually essentially creating a duplicate of the screens to begin with. Okay, all right. It's a good idea to save the project while we're working on it so we don't lose anything. All right, so now at this point, what we want is like a going back screen on this end. So just going to include this over here. And I think it's a good point over there. Okay. I'm going to add a text to completely skip onboarding screens. So the user has an option to skip the onboarding screens, but I don't want to make it obvious. So I'm just going to reduce the opacity of that. All right, that looks good. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in the actual images. Now, just to speed up this process, I've actually just added all these images in the component section, but usually when I'm working on a project, I would actually bring those images in individually. Okay. I'm just going to take those down for a little bit, so we don't need them now. Focus on this one. Okay. Looks like it's in the center. All right. What we're going to do is go back to the layers panel and just reduce the opacity of these so they don't interfere with right now. We're going to need them later. Right, going back to the components, I've also added the carousel dots, so the user is always aware where they are on the screen or during while using the app. Sorry. Okay. And let's see, this is the button that I'm going to show so that the user can click on this to get to the next screen. All right, so that's it for this screen. I'm going to leave this right now over here. We're going to need that later, so I'm not going to delete it. All right, making a duplicate, renaming that. So now the first thing is change the carousels. It's not a particular order, but set this to 40% opacity to match this one. So now the user will know that he's on the middle one. Just making sure I have the right size. Okay. We don't need these over here, so I'm just going to delete them, right? And just going to move this so that now we see the second set of image, second screen, basically. Increase the opacity and decrease this one for now. All right, things good. Again, I'm just going to create another copy of this, rename it, and move it. I'm just going to move the entire thing. All right. Okay, and the carousel dots. All right, so that's basically all the three carousel screens or onboarding screens that I wanted to show. Okay, this looks really close. So I'm just going to make some fine adjustments. But before that, I'm actually going to group everything together and name it content. So I like to group things. All right, so I'm just making sure that I have the same name across all the three screens so that we can create a seamless onboarding or prototyping experience later. All right, I'm going to save this. Now let's create a sign-in screen. So I'm just going to duplicate this one just for the sake of the size of the artboard. Just going to bring this over here. All right, and now for sign in, what I'm going to do is, again, I'm just for the sake of this video, I have created a component that I'm going to use. Okay, now I need that. I'm just going to leave it over here for now. Going back to the layers panel. Okay. Sorry, just need to get something over here. So for the sign in button, I'm just going to get that out. The reason I'm spending just need some time is that when I'm prototyping, I need what I want is for these buttons and the get started or the sign in button to basically be on the same level, and accordingly I'm going to arrange the other username and the password fields. Right, named it at the center. Okay, now I'm going to move this to the side for now. Okay, so I have this username field, which is essentially just a text box and a rectangle without any fill. Let me show that to you. So there's no fill and there is just a 2-pixel border, rounded border. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a repeat grid like this. All right. So there I have it, username and the password field. Let me just increase the distance between them. All right. Now I'm just also going to add the title, that is sign in. And I'm going to give this the style and basically change the text box type. No reason for that, just like it that way. So if you press Ctrl 1, it will zoom out or zoom in to the level of where it fits one screen perfectly on the screen, on the work area. All right, so there I have it. That's the sign in screen. What I'm also going to do is add the back button, or actually we added that back button over there, so I'm just going to copy it from the other screen, select this artboard and say Control V, so I paste it in place. Let me just check it on the layer panel, so it's here. All right, what I also like to do is rearrange the content on the artboard so that when I'm actually prototyping using Adobe Xd's auto animate feature, they work seamlessly. We'll see in a minute. Right, so for this, I'm actually going to move this out above this one. And then we have the repeat grid and the sign-in text. I'm going to put sign-in text below, rename this, and I'm going to leave that open. Or actually, it's better to rename this. Right. Now, the only thing left for us to build is the artboard for registration process. So once the user clicks on get started, you take you to this screen, then this one, and then this one. And then after clicking next, ultimately it goes to the registration screen. So I've built all this already. What I'm also going to do now is just duplicate that and just make this the registration screen. And so for the registration screen, I don't need this. I'm going to delete that. Right. And what I'm going to do is just copy this one, delete this bigger logo and paste it in place. All right, so there we have it. It's going to bring it to the bottom. Then there is the back logo, back icon, I'm sorry. All right, and then skip, then the content. Right, so we're good with this. What I'm going to do with this, just move it up, rename this to register, or better off create account. That's better. Right, I'm going to move this up. Now for this registration process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to include just 5 fields, the 5 user fields. For example, full name, email address, and then password, or I'm going to say create a password and then re-enter password so the user is not confused. Doesn't really, not that a big deal, but anyway. And phone number. So we want the user to be able to contact the adoption agencies and also the adoption agencies to have the user information, and that's why we need the phone number. Right. What I'm also going to include is just a small text box, so the options that the user can select to accept the terms and conditions. Give this text style to move it to the side, and over here going to add a checkbox which is no fill, white border. That looks good, but I think it's too big for what we're looking for. And that looks good. Terms and conditions. Just to show the user that this terms and conditions is a link and the user can open this and to view the terms and conditions. I'm just going to underline that and group these. As always, I'm going to rename the layers, if I can spell it correctly, and have the sign in button on the top. Okay, that looks good. Oh, it's not sign in, it's register. Right, so that looks good. Pressing Control 0 or Command 0 on a Mac brings all of the artboards in the view. So you can have a good overview of that. So I'm just going to recheck something. So I've got the 3 onboarding screens, splash screen, the first screen, which is get started, sign in and register. Oops. Create account. Right. Ideally, I would also include over here on the sign in screen and the create account screens, like just a small link down below, that if let's say if on the sign in screen, the user has the ability to select or go click on the link to register if he doesn't have an account already. And likewise on the create account screen, I would include a link over here. So the user, if the user already has an account, he can click it to go directly sign in. I'm not going to do that now. What I wanted to show you in this video specifically, or more importantly, was a cool feature of Adobe Xd, which is the 3D transforms. You can view that in the properties panel on the right over here. That's the icon, the cube icon over there, right? And so what I want is, like, if you're able to visualize these three screens, the onboarding 1, onboarding 2, and onboarding 3, like three sides of the cube, so that when we're moving from one screen to the other, the first one actually rotates to the left, and in a way that it shows that like it's kind of a cylinder. I'm going to show you, I'm going to demonstrate it. Maybe that's going to be better. All right, so what I'm going to do is, on the first screen, we want this first image showing. So actually going to just turn these, the carousel images 2 and 3, which I created, and I'm going to just rotate those. But to do that, actually going to so it's not going to allow me to use 3D transforms on a component. So I'm going to have to ungroup them and not make it a component. And then again, I'm just going to group it. And right, so with the 3D transform, as I was saying, so the carousel 1 is this image, and then carousel 2 and 3, I'm actually going to rotate them about the vertical axis, which is also called the Y rotation. And I'm almost going to make them 90 degrees, or maybe I'm going to rotate them 90 degrees. And they'll be here almost towards the edge of the screen, so that when we actually prototype it, it'll appear that it's rotating from the edge of the screen to the center, thus creating that cylindrical appearance that we're talking about. So I'm going to reduce the opacity of these two layers all the way down so they're not visible. All right, so now only this is visible, and that's what we want. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this entire thing. And I'm going to paste it above that and delete the below one. Right. And now on this artboard or the screen, we want the first image or the first carousel image to actually rotate to the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, with this 3D transform, I am going to just rotate this about the Y axis, but this time I'm going to rotate it negative 89 degrees and then move it all over, almost to the edge of the screen. Reduce the opacity, so that one's done. Now for the second one, you can't see it, but it's there. I'm going to actually make the rotation or the 3D rotation as 0 and increase the opacity. Now holding shift, I'm actually going to only move this horizontally so everything stays in line, and I'm going to just bring it to the center. Right, and since we actually copied this, we're going to have to re-edit the carousel dots. There we go. All right, I'm going to do that again on the third artboard over here. Okay. Oh, looks like I copied the entire artboard. Just going to copy this content and paste it above over here on this artboard. Remove that one, and now just duplicating the process. So on this screen, which is the final screen on the onboarding process, we need the third carousel image to be showing properly, and this one is actually going to be rotated 90 degrees to the left. So that's the second one. I'm going to select that. With the 3D transform, I'm going to give it an angle of -89 degrees and almost move it to the edge of the screen. Now, one shortcut to move things around on your artboard quickly is using the shift key. So when you move it left or right or above or below, it moves 10 pixels at a time. All right, and then I'm going to reduce the opacity all the way. I love this picture. Okay, I'm going to turn 3D transforms off for this one. Okay, so I guess that's it. I can just bring all the screens together. Right, so there it is. All the content that we had to design for the onboarding process. Now we're going to move on to the prototyping phase. So on the splash screen, what I want is, well, this is the first screen, so I'm just going to indicate that this is the home screen for this flow. Ideally, what I would like to do is, as soon as the splash screen shows up, um, I'm gonna give it a trigger of time. But just to show you guys, I'm just having, I'm just leaving this at tap, and I'm going to select auto animate, and that's it. All right. And so from this screen, it comes to the get started screen, and then I want to actually auto animate or animate this section over here, this group section, the get started, sign in, and all these social media sign in options. So I'm going to go back to the design tab and select this, copy and paste it on the splash screen. But now I'm going to move it down and select these two, move them further down, select this one, move them further down. So Adobe Xd shows that this is actually giving equal amount of space between the elements, but I want more space for the third one. So to show that it's actually sliding from the bottom. So I'm going to select two out of these, actually move them further down. Right, there you go. And I'm going to reduce the opacity of the entire group. That's the only reason I actually group them together over here, so I can make changes to these elements as a whole if I wanted to. Let's see that prototyping or the prototype that we just made. So here's the screen, and at tap, see that swift animation that it creates to bring those elements on the screen. Let's go back. There it is. That's what I love. All right, so that's what we wanted. Now moving on to the next screen, when we click on get started, it should take us over here. I'm gonna set the trigger to tap and the type of animation to auto animate. The easing, I'm gonna leave it at ease in and out, and the duration is 1 second. I'm gonna leave it that so that we can actually see a good animation during the prototyping. Right, so on this screen, what I want to do is going back to design. So let's first just test what's going on by default. So when I click on get started, well, this logo is actually working as it should. But what I want to show is the skip button and the back button to actually drop down from the top. So what I'm going to do is select those two, copy them. On this artboard, I'm just going to copy them in place. And holding the shift key, I'm just going to move them on the top and reduce the opacity all the way. All right, save the progress and then move on to the prototype. There you go. That's a good motion that I wanted to see. All right. Now, I always actually check what the progress is periodically on the prototype screen, just so I know what the individual elements are doing. So I'm going to actually keep checking the prototype to make sure things are working as expected. On this screen, what I want to do is bring in this section from the right. So I'm going to copy this, which is the entire content folder, which includes the next button, the carousel dots, and the content over here. So I'm just going to copy this, select this artboard, paste in place, move them to the right, and leave it on the screen like so. But over here, what I'm going to do is I want that same swift motion like we did for the get started group of content, and I'm going to apply that same animation on this section also. So the content is going to show up first. Now I want the carousel dots and the next button to come up just a little bit later. So I'm going to move them to the right so that the distance is increasing. Again, I'm going to hold the shift button and move this to the right. All right, so that's there. Oh, I forgot to actually reduce the opacity down to 0. Right. So let's test that. Click on get started. See that swift motion over here. I'm gonna add the back link in the prototype to go back over here. Or in the newer versions of Adobe Xd, you can select that as the trigger, but the type of animation, I'm just gonna set it to previous artboard. So whatever screen brought it, whatever link or animation brought it here, when you click on back or when you set the type of the interaction to be previous artboard, it's just going to reverse it, which is perfect for what I want right now. So I'm just gonna bring that. Wow, that's amazing. And then you see that I could do this all day, but we need to complete this. All right, so I'm just gonna save the progress. But what I saw was this section over here, going back to design tab, this section was going down because I actually made a copy over here. Just going to delete that. On this screen, I'm going to make a copy of this and then select this artboard and paste it so it pastes in place. So since this content is actually coming from the right, I want this to make way for that and move to the left to reduce the opacity and move it a little bit further. Or no, I'm just going to leave it over here. Okay. Let's see the progress. So get started. I must have made some mistake. Turns out it actually pasted on this screen and not on this one. So I'm just going to select this, move it out. So leave it over here and reduce the opacity all the way. All right, let's see that now. There you go. That's what I wanted. Amazing. I'm just going to see the entire interaction completely. All right, click on next. I forgot to add the link on the prototype. All right, so coming back to this, click on this one to go to the next one. Gonna select a tap trigger. The type is auto animate because we want that 3D transform thing. All right, and I'm going to leave these as is. On this one, I'm going to select, or I'm going to click on this plus icon to create a link. And as before, I'm just going to select the previous artboard. I'm going to do the same with this one. All right, and now on this, I'm going to go to the next screen, which is good. All right. And just because we have this skip link over here, I'm actually going to create a new link that takes the user directly to the registration screen. And on this one, I'm not going to keep the auto animate interaction. I'm actually going to use a push left. So the entire screen actually pushes in from the right side to the left side. Right. I'm going to do the same with all the others. All right, and since this is the last onboarding screen, it doesn't make sense to have a skip content. So with this selected, I'm just going to remove that because this button over here is actually going to do the same thing. But I do also want to do something else with this button on the last screen. So let's see that now. All right, going back to the design screen, our design tab, open up the library section, and on the last onboarding artboard, I don't want to use this arrow. I actually want to provide a button with some text on it, like the get started. We're going to create a good animation on this as well. So I'm just going to give this button the same height as this next icon over here. So that's 64, which is already 64. Okay. Now I'm going to center it nicely, and I'm going to leave that link to get started. But when it comes to the screen, going back to the layers panel, actually put it below the content group, but on this screen, I want this button to move over here, and I'm going to reduce the opacity all the way down. And to create that smooth animation, I'm just going to copy that and paste it on over here as well. Like before, I'm going to put it below the content, but this time I'm going to move it so the left edge actually coincides with this button. I'm going to reduce the opacity all the way. Let's go back to the overview, go back to the prototyping tab, and add that link to the registration screen. So it's going to be a push left animation for 1 second. All right, that's good. Save the progress and check what we have so far. That's there. That's there. See that rotating carousels? That's what we wanted to do. And there you have it. I've got to change the text over here. Going back to the design screen. All right. The last thing for us to do is to just make sure everything's well with the sign-in screen. So I'm just going to go to this, bring it over here to the screen, and As with the create account screen, I'm going to have the same animation over here, that is push left. Or what we can try to do is an auto animate, because we have the logo over here. That's going to be good. All right. So I'm going to group everything that I have over here. Right. I'm going to go back to this screen, paste it in place, and just going to move it to the right so it comes in from the right. Reduce the opacity. Right, so it's going to slide in from there. And I already have this over here. Just going to delete that, copy that again, and paste it over here. But I'm going to move this to the left, and again reduce the opacity, which is going to give us that smooth animation that we're looking for. Oops, sorry about that. So going back, and let's see what we have now. Wow, that's what we're looking for. And just one last thing, just going to add that previous artboard. I don't think I added that over here. Previous artboard. Right. Okay, so that's it. Let's see the final results. I like that. Click on get started. What a sleek animation we have over here. It's awesome. So that's it for today. In the next episode of this series, what I'm going to do is create a micro interaction or a small animation. So to show that when the user actually enters the username and the password and clicks on the sign in button, I'm going to show you guys how to make a small or micro interaction so that when the user clicks on the sign in button, it's going to be a small animation that takes it to the home screen of the app. All right, so that's it for now. Thank you so much for staying along or following along with this tutorial. If you have any questions, any suggestions, you can always type them in the comment section down below. I'm going to actually include the link to the starter file, as I had mentioned at the beginning of the video. You can always download the starter file from the link in the description. Thanks, guys. I hope you take care. And if you like what I'm showing you, then do consider to subscribe to this channel. I have some awesome content to show you guys.